So now we've gone through the financial model and the lean canvas, I just want to say one quick thing about validation. The fastest way to validate is to put your product out there and just watch what happens. The thing about the financial model and the lean canvas is that they work on assumptions, and you'll never really know if those assumptions are accurate till people start using your product. Now that we know that idea is valid, we can move on to the next step: building. When you're building any technology product, you have to make some key decisions on how and what to build. So first, let's talk about how to build. There are two main options when building. The first is doing it yourself, and the second is to hire a team. Both can be successful, but there are steps you need to have to take in order to launch a product successfully. So, what's the difference between the two? There are a few key points you need to think about when deciding how to build. The first is cost. When you're looking at cost, doing it yourself wins. You don't have to pay yourself, and you will usually be paying the least amount if you're doing all the work. The next thing is time. Here, hiring someone wins. The biggest reason is that usually your team will know what they're doing and will be able to build a lot faster than you could because they have already gone through the learning stage. The next is support. Again, here hiring a team is the better option. With a team, you have someone to reach out to when things go wrong, and they will go wrong. That's just life. Any company that promises you a perfect release is a scam. Like if they tell you that you're going to release in 3 months and you release in 3 months, like it's a scam. Just trust me. The next is flexibility. Um, Most development companies will make you define some kind of requirements, then quote a price to build, and will hand over a finished product when done. Problem is with this is that for some reason you need to make any changes. Let's say you realize that one of your assumptions was wrong, then the development company will have to quote you a new price. This means that you could invest a lot of time and money building something that no one wants. The last thing is what I like to call the full service approach. This basically looks at whether or not your building choice focuses on all the things you need to grow. Things like managing, marketing, data, and profitability. Here, I would say neither option really does this well because most development firms build and hand over, and they're not really interested in building your business. On the other hand, if you're doing everything yourself, there's a good chance you're wasting a lot of time and money and mistakes that a professional would avoid. So, but there's actually a better way. Partnering with sitebuilder.com.ng, that's the best way because we're focused on your growth and we make sure that we're building in the most time and cost effective way. We want you to launch fast, so we are also taking care to build based on feedback from you and your customers. We also offer the full service, helping you figure out if your business is profitable and how to get it there quickly. So you're not going to come to us and we'll send you a bill for £1 million, say to build like a one-page website. We don't do that. We talk to you about your business, and then we kind of come up with a plan together, which is why I say sitebuilder.com.ng is now a consulting service. So at sitebuilder.com.ng, we work with what I like to call the 100-day build process. First, we define your business using the lean canvas and the financial model. This ensures that we build something that is actually market ready. Next, we identify your MVP, which is your minimum viable product. Basically, these are the minimum set of features that you need to get your product to the market so you can start testing your assumptions. Third, we use readily available tools because we want to move quickly. We make sure that we leverage existing platforms that can really help shorten the amount of time it takes to have a working product. Fourthly, we build only when necessary. This is a really important one. Building is extremely time consuming and expensive. I've seen too many people focus on building things that are beautiful and unique, but ultimately fail because they didn't create something that provides value. The last one is test every assumption. Because we're moving so fast, we need to make sure that we're not running blind. Remember, when we do our validation, we are making an assumption, and it's really important to validate these assumptions are true or false, as the case may be. By testing everything, we can really focus on building something that adds value to your customers. So that's our 100-day build approach. It's one of the most effective ways that I have found to build a successful product. Before I move on, I'd like to share a couple of techniques that we use to get started. So the first one is landing pages. The first quick launch technique we have is to build landing pages. I love landing pages. A landing page is basically a one-page website that allows you to test the waters. You can push traffic to the page and see how many people are interested in your product. And it's a great way to do some initial validation. The second is to use web apps and builders because instead of writing your own code, these can really help you cut down development time and a great way to launch your product. I've done product launches in a day because I've used builders, right? And here are some, and we'll put some in our resources for you to know. The last technique I'm going to share is reusable code. A lot of non-developers don't know this, but a lot of time you spend as a developer is writing similar pieces of code for different clients. For example, take an admin dashboard. You have to build one for almost every client. As hyperdo.com.ng, instead of building those from scratch, we can leverage our huge code library to create something good in record time. So in summary, I want to leave you with this quote from Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, that stresses the importance of moving fast. Move fast and break things. Unless you're breaking stuff, you're not moving fast enough. And I just love this because it's how we kind of think about building. So let's talk about growing. In this next section, we're going to talk about perhaps the most challenging aspect of building a business, which is growth, right? The biggest question people have when it comes to growth is, how exactly do you grow? And there's a simple answer. You have to make something that people want. How does this work? Well, how do you make something that people want? Well, in my experience, there are three things you have to understand to build something great. The first is people. Understanding people is important because they are your customers. You have to understand what drives and motivates them. Once you understand that, you're basically unlocking the keys to wealth. Second, you have to understand business. I'm not talking about economics or finance here. What I mean is that you have to understand what a business does, which is basically provide value to people in return for money. If you don't think of your business in terms of the value it provides, you'll fail almost before you start. The last is technology. And by technology, I don't mean computers on the internet. Remember, technology is anything man-made that helps us perform our tasks easier. A hoe in the hands of a farmer is technology. In the context of this webinar, however, we'll mostly be talking about the internet and computers. But if you really want to grow, you or someone on your team has to understand what technology is capable of and how it can be used. Partnering with SiteBuilder, you get that as an added bonus. We understand technology and how it works. So now that you have an understanding of these things, you can move to the next step. Growth hacking. So what is growth hacking? Growth hacking is a process and mindset of searching for ways that your product can grow. It's kind of like a mix between engineering and marketing. The key is to find untapped channels of customers that are motivated to use your product. And here are some companies that have successfully growth hacked their way to success. In each case, you can see how they started growing and then suddenly, boom, they started doubling their numbers. For Airbnb, you can see here they had the number of guest arrivals and boom, double, 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 double. Same thing for Instagram. Just look at the huge, this hockey curve. Investors love seeing this hockey curve. It just means that you're acquiring customers like crazy. Facebook monthly active users, same thing. It just, at this point, it starts to double, 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 double. And it's great how they're growing so fast. So we're going to look at some examples of how they achieved this growth. So if you've watched the movie The Social Network, you already know how Facebook growth hacked their way to success. And how they do it? College students. Sean Parker, the president of Facebook, says it best. The reason Facebook went in through college students was because college kids were generally not MySpace users. College kids were generally not Friendster users. Nobody actually believed that you could enter the market. Through this niche market and gradually through this carefully calculated war against other networks become the one network to rule them all. So the next example is Hotmail, and this is by far my favorite despite their hideous logo. When Hotmail, and you can see this was Hotmail's original logo. It's so ugly. When Hotmail originally started, email was expensive and the only people who had it were large corporations and schools. And even though their product was free, they were having trouble growing until one of their investors came up with the idea of a rider in all their signatures. Get your free email at Hotmail. That one small change that didn't cost a dime made them explode. They went from 20,000 users to over 1 million in 6 months, making them one of the most successful growth hackers of their time. Now, I love this story because, one, it just goes to show, even if you're giving something away free, it can be difficult to grow. And sometimes you don't, and as well, you don't need to spend millions and millions on marketing. They just did this one free thing. And boom, numbers started growing. And let's look at what that looked like. When they sold to Microsoft 1.5 years after launch, Hotmail had 12 million users. Think about this. There were only 70 million internet users at the time. So that's a huge chunk of like the total internet users. That's huge growth. Okay, so how can we help you get this rapid growth? Well, I call it the 100 customer plan. You can tell that I love 100 days, 100 customers. Yeah, I just love the number 100. And so how do we get you this growth? So, well, it first ties to our 100-day launch plan. First, we make an assumption of our customers and the business model. Then we test to see what happens. Then we test our assumptions. We don't believe anything until we've tested it. Then we develop a deeper understanding of how we can provide values. This focuses on understanding our customer bases and keep testing until we get something that works and we're providing value. This is all pulled together to create what is known as a growth hacking funnel. So a growth hacking funnel, crudely put, is the process to turn people into money. It takes the different stages of a customer's journey and tries to optimize it in the most ambitious way. So the first is acquisition. Acquisition is basically how people get to your site, your app, or whatever. How do you bring people to you? How do they find out about it? The next is activation. You have to very, very quickly get these customers to their aha moment. Basically, the moment that they realize the value you're providing, we're like, oh my God, how have I lived without this product? The next is retention. This is how often will people use your product? And you do this by providing value very early and often. The more value people get out of your product, the more they'll want to use it, and technically the more money you can make out of them. The next one is referral, getting users and advocates to share. This is like getting people, if people are this excited about your product, they will naturally want to tell their friends. That's just how human beings work. So they're sharing on social media, word of mouth. You just want people talking about your product and how great it is. Before I go into revenue, actually, let's talk about referral for a second. Uber does this by incentivizing referral and word of mouth, and that can also be really effective. So revenue is to turn users and activity into revenue. Like, how do we monetize their behavior? So they love the product, they're using it, but how do we actually make money? And that's your growth hacking funnel. So you look at all these steps and kind of break them down. So the most important thing is to make stuff people want. Again, I can't say this enough. The most important thing is to make something people want. If you do this, marketing is just a way to let people know that you have what they want. If they already have it, they'll be willing to pay for it. So what about conventional marketing technique? Well, there's definitely a place for them, and in this day and age, they can be a great way to build awareness for your product. So at that top level of the funnel, the most important thing about conventional marketing platforms, whether it be digital, offline, or social media, is to be consistent. Having a marketing plan and a content schedule is one of the most effective ways to do that. So let's talk about your marketing plan, right? So you have to be consistent. You use conventional marketing to tell people about your ads, and if you're consistent, then you can really start to build a following. And how can you stay consistent? Building a content schedule can help keep you organized. So this is our marketing plan. Let's talk about it for a second. At cyber.com.ng, we use the See, Think, Do, Care framework. This framework maps different aspects of the growth hacking funnel to different stages in the different stages, right? So C is awareness, Think is activation, Do is retention, and Care is referral. Once you've mapped these stages, then you'll be able to see what it looks like in each phase. Then you figure out how to engage them and market to them. Lastly, you figure out how to measure the success of your campaign, right? So how do you define your audience in each phase? Let's walk through this really quickly. C is the largest addressable qualified audience. Think is the largest addressable qualified audience with some commercial intent. So C is everybody in your target market. So let's say you are doing an e-commerce site and you sell activewear. C is everybody who works out on a regular basis. Think is commercial intent. So somebody who is either visited your website or maybe added something to their cart. That's the thing. So they're thinking about buying, right? They're not just they're in your audience. Do is Largest addressable qualified audience with loads of commercial intent. Maybe it's somebody who's actually walked into a physical store, they're handling stuff like they're ready to buy. They're asking you questions, they've added something to their cart, so that they're ready to buy. And care is people who are your current customers, um, and you'll be able to um, that have done transactions with you. We usually say minimum of 2 transactions for these, right? So moving ahead, we will then go into the weekly content schedule. So based on all this, once you're done filling out your marketing plan framework, it becomes really easy to create a schedule that addresses all these tasks that you need to do. And you can be as granular as you need to be. I recommend taking a day to come up with at least a week's worth of content and setting it up, so you can use the rest of the time to focus on other tasks. We can also help you do this. We have social media experts on hand to help you create and manage all your ads and social media accounts. There are also tools to help you manage and sometimes auto post all your content, like Later and Hootsuite, and I'll be sharing some of these in the resources slides that you'll be receiving at the end of the webinar. So, I just wanted to close out with one thing to remember about creating content. Content is king, but it must add value. You can put 100, if you run a business and you put up 100 pictures of cats, for example, unless you sell cats, that's not adding value. So remember to add value with each piece of content that you're creating, and that's how you'll get users to kind of like stick with you and spend money with you. So last, let's talk about measurement, what and how to track. This is really important, and we'll go through it. Um, you know, and it's an easy thing to get wrong, right? So sometimes when you're when you're trying to look at your data, this is how you feel. Like you're drowning in a sea of numbers and you don't know where to start. Right? The problem is that current analytics will give you so many options and so much information, it's difficult to figure out what's important. But focusing on the measurements that really matter will help you filter out the noise and what isn't really necessary. So, how do you figure out what really matters, right? You focus on your goals. If you're planning to climb a mountain, you wouldn't try to find out its age or its history. While it's good information to have, the most important things are to know how high it is, how long it will take the average person to climb it, and what else you need for the climb. Like, that's important. Your goal is to get to the top of the mountain, not to become the foremost expert on Mount Kilimanjaro, So you have to kind of like have that in mind. What is my goal, and what helps me achieve this? Everything else is a distraction. So, where do you find these goals? Well, if you've been following along, you should already have them. You check your financial model, you check your business model, and you check your marketing plan. So, your business model is like your link canvas. So, those 3 things will tell you what your goals are. So, now you've identified what to track, the next task is how to get that information. There are 3 main places where you can get this information. The first is platform tools. Whenever you're building something, if you're not building from scratch, odds are it will come with some sort of inbuilt tools to track your users. They may not be very fancy, but they'll give you some basic information. The next one is your analytics tools. These are things like Google Analytics, Hotjar, or Firebase. These can be installed on your website or app and can usually give you some very deep insights about your users. The last and often the most forgotten one is customer feedback. You cannot ignore your customers when you're building something. They will be the ones to tell you when something is working or not. But you don't always have to collect feedback manually. Sometimes there are more subtle ways to collect feedback. For example, creating landing pages and collecting email signups, or tracking how many times your contacts get shared is a great way to measure success. So, once you've tracked your goals, the next thing is to figure out a sustainable way to monitor them. Reports and dashboards are a great way to understand your data and get insights about your product. That's why at typo.com.ng we have a dedicated analyst who works with you to help you not only figure out what and how to track, but also to present that information to you in a meaningful way that impacts your business. So, we've come to the end of the webinar. Hopefully you've gotten some great information from this and you're ready to start. Again, we've walked through your financial model, your business plan, your marketing plan. We've given you a brief overview of technology, and hopefully all this information primes you and gets you ready to start. So, we love people who are starting businesses because really you're changing the world. Like that's how we feel. And if you're changing the world and in that headspace where you want to start a business and change the way people do things, then we've got a special offer. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we're offering a one-time discount of our initial one-on-one consulting service. In that session, we'll discuss your idea and get you started on one of our plans. We'll work on building your business and financial models and also help you develop your marketing plan and contact schedule. This service is usually 25,000 naira for the 2-hour session, but as a special offer, we're giving you 70% off and offering it for only 7,500. If you'd like to sign up, click the link on the screen. It should pop up on your screen right now. And make the payment, and you'll be able to book your 2-hour session instantly. In the meantime, I'll be spending the next 15 minutes answering your questions. So if you have any questions, please just type them in the questions box and I'll try to go through them and answer them. And I'll be answering them live so you know that I'm actually here. Thank you.